You're listening to the Wanderlusting Wives podcast, your podcast for escaping life's monotony, indulging in your wildest travel fantasies, and discovering the constant beauty of this ever-changing world.
On today's episode, Art and Julie DeBrookie of the Places Where We Go podcast share stories of traveling using genealogy as a vehicle and awesome hikes.
Welcome to the Wanderlusting Wives podcast. We're your navigators, Allison
and Regan. And today, another Travel Tuesday coming at you. Happy Travel Tuesday, listeners. Thank you for joining us so far on season 2, by the way. We've been having a ton of fun getting to know our guests and hearing their stories, and we hope you have been enjoying that too. And reach out to us, of course, as always. And you can do that via our new website, of course, which is www.wanderlustingwives.com, where you can find more information about us. You can get in touch with us. You can hear all of our episodes from season 1 and season 2 so far. And Allie, what's going on social media?
Yeah, an exciting week over here on social media. Our Instagram is at Wanderlusting Wives. You can also find us on Facebook at Wanderlusting Wives Podcast, Twitter at Wanderlust Wives, and then email as well at wanderlustingwives@gmail.com. We are also doing our giveaway as well. That is still going on, so check us out on social media. We have some cool travel items to give away, and if you subscribe to our newsletter, you get an extra entry into our giveaway.
Yeah, thanks, Allie. So there's lots of fun stuff going on. Go ahead and check that out and give us a subscribe and a follow. We'd love to get in touch with you. And so, all right, on to our episode. Today we have some very special guests sharing their stories with us. We have Art and Julie from the Places Where We Go podcast. So welcome, Art and Julie. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having us.
Art and Julie, can you just start off by telling us a little bit about you and then also just a little bit of your travel background?
Yeah, you bet. So we are the hosts of a podcast called The Places Where We Go, and we've been at it it'll be 4 years this summer. And we've been, I would say, traveling for a little over the last 10 years. And I draw a distinction between vacationing, which is what we used to do before, and then traveling, which I find kind of much more purposeful. And somewhere along the way, and this would have been about 4 years ago, we realized we had so many, I think, stories and experiences. And we noticed during one of our travels, because we would, in advance of travel, look to see, are there podcasts about the places that we're going to? And we were going to some obscure places, not finding any podcasts, and said to each other, hey, what do you think about starting a podcast? And we put our foot in the water, and we've been at it for almost 4 years. Yeah.
That's awesome. And where can we find your podcast, and what are your social media handles so our listeners can follow you on social media?
Yeah, so our podcast is called The Places Where We Go. It's available on just about every streaming service out there. The most popular ones that people seem to find us on are Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Podbean is another one, and there is a trickling of other channels that are out there, or other providers rather, that people can find us through. And then on social media, we're on Twitter, where our name is truncated to The Places Where the number 1. We're on Instagram as The Places Where We Go. We have a Facebook page, The Places Where We Go. We also do a YouTube channel that we publish a little bit more frequently than the podcast. So the podcast comes out every other week. YouTube comes out almost every week, and that's The Places Where We Go at YouTube. So that's we just started at Pinterest about 2 weeks ago, so that's new.
I hear that. We did the same thing because it was, oh my goodness, thrown into the fire, it felt like. What are we doing? Definitely. Well, I did look at your podcast and listen to your podcast a bit, and I love that you kind of extend out some of your topics too. Like there are multiple episodes on a certain place or like specific things to do within that place. I just find that really cool and really helpful, especially if you're looking to go somewhere specific. I know you have done episodes of Wales, there's Ireland, there's like all sorts of different countries. So if you're looking for something that's a little in depth too, like I would definitely recommend your podcast to any of our listeners too. So go ahead and give them a listen. So I know you just mentioned that you've been to some obscure places. And so I'm interested to get into some of these stories that you might have. So what are some of the stories from throughout your travels that you could share with us and our listeners?
Yeah, so I think
We've had some good ones.
we'll frame. Well, so let me start off by just mentioning that the way we travel is multidimensional. So we know so many people who, when they travel, they kind of do it one way. So, there's some friends of ours, it's only in an RV. There's other people that we know that it's only domestic travel. We want to do as much as we can.
Everything.
So we go domestic, international, we sleep in tents, we sleep in cars.
We slept in the back of our van.
We did that twice last year.
Yeah.
We have an RV. This summer, we're going to be going on a cruise. So if there's a way to travel, we do it. And in terms of maybe a couple of lenses that we can talk about. So one is we've done some travel where we focused our destinations based on genealogy research that Julie does all that.
Yeah. I have been involved in genealogy for a very long time, and I kind of really got the bug about 2005. Um, all the stories in my family were so fascinating and so interesting to me that I thought, well, is it true? Are we really related to so and so? Is this, so I started to investigate that through Ancestry. And after about finding over 3,000 relatives on Ancestry and gathering thousands of photos, I found that there were places I could get back to as far as the early 1600s for my family. And then it was just like, wow, wouldn't it be great to go there and check out these places? And one of the biggest parts of my ancestry is the British Isles. So we went on a UK trip specifically to investigate some of my genealogy from that area. And then there was a very big bonus about his father, Arthur's father, that was in England, right at the time of the war. It was at the time of the war when he was just a young boy, and we found out exactly where he was, and we investigated that. And it was the greatest thing ever to be able to find something as wonderful as that, and the places that we lost his dad, so it's very special to us. The places where he was, the people that he was with, his twin brother was with him. This was all wartime, and they were from Poland, and they lost their father, and it was an amazing journey, and we got to walk that, and I thought it was incredible.
Yeah, so like with some of the obscure places, Julie has that 1600s history that goes back to places in Wales,
Mhm.
and then these very, very small towns in Somerset, England. So we ended
Right.
up going to a place called Raglan, where there's the ruins of Raglan Castle,
I have a
where,
castle, I
yeah,
found out.
it's in ruins.
What?
But it was just fantastic to walk those grounds.
Amazing.
It was amazing. And then these very small um, towns on the Bristol Channel
Mhm.
in Somerset, a place called Watchet, which is one of the ones we looked up. Are there any podcasts on Watchet? And we might be the first one. A place called Dunster, an absolutely just wonderful medieval town that's got this great history. And so there was,
Amazing history.
yeah,
Yeah.
places like that we went to. And the only reason we ended up at these places was because they came up on the genealogical research.
Mhm.
So I think for a lot of, everybody has a story that they come from somewhere, and many of us probably in the United States have roots that go back to somewhere overseas. And so that creates an opportunity to put together a travel plan to find out, where did your people come from and what was their story. And
Yeah.
I think like the easy thing to do is always, go to the share in Cabo San Lucas or something, but it sure is an adventure to,
Which I would do too,
yeah,
but
Oh, me
dig through your
too.
family roots, and then, learn more about yourself, and in the process, learn more just about history in general.
it's quite an amazing feeling to know even though you're so distant from these people that you see on paper, the names that you see on paper, that you're walking in a place that they were actually walking themselves. And then you look at the history of that place. I love history. So you look at the history of that place and you imagine that these relatives of yours were in these huge battles and some of them became heroes, some of them were not. And it's amazing to me to be able to visit those places and get a sense of what my past was like and where I came from.
Yeah. So on the podcast, those were some of the earliest episodes that we've done, but we've shared in detail, some of those stories related to those journeys. So that's like one example of what is on our podcast.
Yeah. And how we do it with genealogy.
That's incredible. I do have one follow-up question here. If you had to say, what would be like the most interesting thing that you learned about your family through the whole thing?
Well, if I were going back to Wales, it would be that my one ancestor was a young boy on a dock, and he had money. His family had money. But at that time, they were kidnapping people off the docks and bringing them across to America to be indentured servants. And that is how we got started here in America. Is that my ancestor was kidnapped off a dock as a young man and brought to America to the colonies and was an indentured servant here.
Yeah, for me, I think one of the revelations was, as Julie mentioned, my dad and his footsteps was the fact that he survived. So
Yeah.
he had the story, and just in a nutshell, as a young boy, that's when World War II started. The family lost everything in Poland. They were relocated to Siberia. A couple of years after that, they ended up being relocated to refugee camps in the Middle East. And then he ended up being recruited by the Royal Air Force, lied about his age to get in. So I think he had to be like minimum 16 years old. He was only
He was
14.
14, yeah.
But when we were in Liverpool, which is where he would have arrived. And there's a museum there. It's called the Merseyside Museum. And there was a depiction there of the journey that like my dad would have taken. And so basically, he went from the Suez Canal around the Cape of Africa.
And at this time,
Yeah,
there were German submarine
submarines.
warships
Yeah.
everywhere
So the fact that his boat traveled as many, I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of
for
miles
weeks and weeks and
and
weeks.
didn't get blown up by German submarines,
Mm-hmm.
that to me was amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm like getting chills just like listening to this. This is so crazy.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible. And it's such a fun thing to do. Um, I just absolutely love to connect the genealogy to it. And I have yet to visit so many other places that are connected to my family. And that's our goal. We'll never get to all of them, but it's a fun journey to take anyway.
Yeah, and I'll say, I think for if anybody's interested in doing something like this, if you have an opportunity, do it when you can. So one
Yeah.
example for me is where my dad's family grew up, and is from probably for generations. Used to be Poland, but after
Mm-hmm.
World War II, when they changed the borders, it got ceded over to Russia, and his area today is actually in present day Ukraine. I don't think we're going to be going to Ukraine
No.
anytime soon.
No.
Yeah, I mean, there would have been an opportunity several years ago to have done that, but
Yeah.
this right now, we're going to have to wait several years, and hopefully things calm down and people's get their heads
Yeah.
together and
Yeah.
stuff,
When it
and would
when
like to
it's
go.
yeah, when it's better and safer. I mean, the one thing about the perk, I guess, about getting older, there's many perks, by the way, but the perk is that you're willing to take a little bit more chances because you got your life lived and you're happy with what you've done, or hopefully you are. And I'm willing to go over there and take some chances just to be able to walk that place where his father, who was an incredibly wonderful man, where he was. I mean, I would love to see the place of his birth. So we'll get there.
I love that. Yeah, that is so cool. I think For us, we're still so young and have so many places to explore, but the thoughts of, checking out our ancestry and having that be a starting point to push us forward in our future travels is really inspiring. It's got my wheels turning for sure because I know my dad's really into history, so he knows a little bit of about my ancestors, but not as in depth as you have, Julie. So I really like that you're sharing this with us because it's definitely inspiring me. So hopefully it's inspiring our listeners as well.
I hope people that have that interest, especially if you love history, I wish I can really inspire people to just go out there and just do it and get to where you can. If I were to only do domestic travel, I'd still be happy with that because we have such a long history in the United States also. I would be happy with that. And just the fact that I can get out there and I'm strong enough to do these things, just it's thrilling and it makes me really, really happy that I can do it now.
Love that. You only have one life, so spend it being happy as much as possible. So there you have it.
And now a quick word from our sponsor. Newsly is an all-in-one audio super app for iOS and Android. It picks up the most trending articles on the web on topics you choose at any given moment and reads them to you in a natural human voice. The entire web becomes listenable for the first time, all in one place. Browse articles from topics you choose and start playing. Stop scrolling and start listening. You can follow any topic as specific as you like, from sports, tech, business, science, Bitcoin, or even the Kardashians. It will find you the latest articles and read them to you aloud. And the best part, they have podcasts. Explore trending podcasts from over 80 countries. You can even find us there. I started using it as my default podcast app. They even have a digital radio. Download and use Newsly for free now at www.newsly.me or from the link in the description and use promo code WIVES. That's WIVES.
But
And you can get a
going
1
on a
month free
cruise,
premium
so
subscription.
That's going to be
You can
this
find all this
summer's
information in our
we're doing the
description
Baltic
from this
cruise.
episode.
Yeah.
And now back
So
to our
I'm
episode.
so excited.
Yeah, so it's a 2-week cruise.
Yeah.
And
On our 25th anniversary, we took an Alaskan cruise. That was absolutely awesome. And we just had our 35th. So now we're going to do this Baltic cruise on the tail of our 35th. So I'm really excited. For the 45th, I'm going to make it bigger.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
that,
going to be.
that might be around the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
So related to the cruise, one of the things I'll kind of throw out there, and maybe it's under the category of travel tips. For us, when we go to Europe, which we're going to have to do for this cruise, obviously, one of the biggest expenses is paying for the airfare for us from Los Angeles
Yeah.
to overseas. And so now that we've been overseas several times, our mindset is if we're going to have to pay this money anyways, we're going to try to milk the time as much as possible. So while the cruise is a 2-week cruise, we will arrive in England at least a week before the ship leaves. We'll spend about a week or so around London,
London. Yeah.
make our way to Southampton. The ship will leave from there. We'll do 2 weeks on the water, and then the cruise ends in Copenhagen, Denmark. And before we fly home, we'll spend about a week there.
Mhm.
So it's a way of getting some more mileage out of that investment in the plane ticket. Um,
Oh,
yeah.
I have to say another perk about genealogy is when you really start getting into it, you start connecting with relatives you never knew you had. And I have relatives that have popped up from Mexico. I've got many different cultures in my background. So my dad's Mexican, Swedish, and my mom's mostly British Isles. So um, I've got Mexican relatives I never knew I had. I found some Swedish relatives that I'm in contact with. It is just incredibly fun to be able to connect with them on social media. I don't speak Swedish, so we do it through social media, but still you can translate and you can get, what they're saying, and it's fantastic. It's so much fun.
That is really cool. Do you think you'll connect with any of them when you're in Denmark?
I think the travel time is going to be a little bit too much because they're on farmland that's pretty far away from where we're going to be. But we're definitely going back to that area and Stockholm area, and then just travel
Mhm.
from there and go to the farm that my great grandmother
World
was
cruise.
born on. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's I'm just excited about stuff like that. I'll contact them at that point because they're the ones that are going to take me to the farm and show me, the family history there.
That's
So
incredible. Yes.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, I have pictures of it. And it's still there. I know it's still there. So I get to go visit that someday too.
Yeah.
So I have a
Wow. I
cat.
think you're really fortunate. I don't know many people, well, maybe people just don't put the time into it, but I don't know many people who have so many connections in places that are still standing because they haven't been, bombarded by the war per se or other natural disasters, or people who are open to connecting with you. So I think you're really fortunate that you have made those connections to those places and those people.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you did stumble across part of the piece of the puzzle, and that is putting in the time.
Yeah.
So Julie puts in a lot of time into that research, and then there's time, reaching out to people, making the connections. So I mean, there's clearly many people interested in this because there's so many who are in something like ancestry.com,
Yeah.
but it does require that personal research.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's time consuming. I do take breaks in between because it does overwhelm sometimes, but
but
it's been well worth it.
yeah, and the payoff is you come up with new places to
Places to
travel to.
go.
Yeah, yeah.
That's always exciting, right? I already know that my mom, as soon as she hears this episode, she's going to start planning her own trip based on genealogy. This is just going to inspire her, and I know several other people in my life that will be dying to hear this. So that's incredible. Yeah. Now I did see that you also might have some stories about some inspiring hikes.
Yeah.
Oh, love to hike.
Yes. So, well, we can share a few with you. So,
We've been on many.
maybe, I don't know, a dozen years ago or so. So, a while back, we had seen this movie. You may have heard of it. It's called The Way, and it's about the Camino de Santiago. So, that's a very famous hike in Spain. And there's many different routes, but the one that seems to be most popular is about a 500-mile walk. And that's been something that, back then after we saw the movie, we said to ourselves, hey, that would be something we'd love to do someday. But we knew that it wasn't something that we could do while I was working. So we put that on the back burner until retirement time, which is where I am at now.
Finally.
Just did an early retirement. But leading up to that, we did try to take advantage of hikes that we could do. So one of the first ones that we did that was, bigger than a typical, Saturday hike, we live on the edge of the Santa Monica recreational area, which is part of the national park system. And there is a trail there called the Backbone Trail. It runs nearly 70 miles. And we hiked that entire trail. And the way we did it is we would go out every other week. We would do segments of about 10 to 12 miles at a time. And over 2 months, completed that whole trail. So I know there's many parts of the country where there's very long trails, and so I would say to people, like, if you think you have to do it all at once, you don't necessarily have to. So that's like one example.
Yeah, we were in close proximity to this Backbone Trail, so it was easy enough to just take a day on a weekend, hike that. I think the longest day was a 12-mile hike,
Yeah.
and then come back, and then go back again and start where we left off. So it was really fun. It was a group of people that were doing it with a guide, and it was tremendously well worth it to me. I had a
Yeah.
great time. There was some private property that was bought out by the park system, so we were actually like going through people's backyards at some points, but it was permitted because we had a guide with us. So find out all the particulars when you want to do hikes like this, because there are particulars to every hike, especially here in California, and just go for it and have a good time. And
And then another one we just this last
Just
year
recently,
had found out about, and this is kind of more connected to that Camino walk in Spain. We have in California the California missions that span from San Diego in the south to just north of San Francisco.
there's 21 missions along the coast
And we
area.
learned that there's this thing called the California Mission Trail, which actually is 800 miles of trail. So we ended up hooking up with a group that did a segment of it one weekend, and we had fun with that. And then a few months later, there was an overnighter plan to walk from one mission, Santa Barbara mission, I think, to Ventura mission.
Yeah.
So that was like, I think, a 35-mile walk.
Yeah. So it was split up. There was a 17-mile day and then an 18-mile day.
So a lot of walking. Yeah, they transported a tent for us, so we had a place where we tented overnight. But we have now done 2 segments of that system, and I'm inspired to, at some point, we're not going to do it all at once, but do kind of chunk by chunk of this trail that we have in California, which up until a year ago I had no idea that even was a thing in California.
Don't you love that when you can live somewhere your entire life and then be like, wait a minute, what do we have? I love those moments that you just keep discovering things.
Yeah. You mention all the time, I will go to the grave and not have done probably most of the things that there are to do in California. And I've lived here almost all my life. And we try to do so much, but there is so much. And when I hear people say, I'd like to go out and do something and I don't know what to do, I'm like, oh my gosh, just open the door, because there's a world of adventure out there. And sometimes all you have to do is just mark your calendar that you're going to do something on this particular day, and then make yourself an adventure.
Yeah, be adventurous. Be adventurous. It's scary for a lot of people, and I have to tell you, there were times where I was scared to do, certain that hike, that backbone hike. I was a little bit worried about because we hadn't really hiked. I mean, we weren't really hikers, and I am at this point in my life where I'm like, no, I know what my limits are. I know your limits, but if you keep that in the back of your mind and go for it. Just go and do it, and you will. I just don't think you'll ever be disappointed. I really don't. If you have little foibles along the way, adjust, move the way you need to move, and just keep going. And it's for me, it's the way to go at this point in my life.
Yeah, that's great advice for living life.
Yeah, life is too precious. You just go for it.
So true. So true. Life, and also this world is not in the market for disappointing. Like this world, this natural world is, especially living somewhere like California. I've been trying to make my way out there because it's just like you have everything out in that one state. And like I love the West anyways, and we do. I love New York. It has a lot of beautiful aspects, but California, there's just it's true. And with the weather and everything, it's just there's everything. It's beautiful.
I usually try to recommend, if I hear that people are coming to California, so many people, they think about, what am I going to do when I get to California? And the place that ends up being on people's list is like Disneyland. And I'm like, no, where you want to go is, if I was going to pick like one place in California that is the most amazing place for me personally, Sequoia National Park.
Oh, love it.
Absolutely
inspiring.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
And that's what started. I mean, we try everything. We tent camp, we RV camp, we we'll get a cabin somewhere, we'll get a hotel. I mean, whatever works. We'll sleep in the back of our van. Whatever works for us, we make it work. And we just laugh and smile and sing along the way because we're having such a great time.
Yeah. And like you said, California, we have a nonstop list of things that we can do here. So
yeah. I'm taking him on a trail that he's never been on, just in our own backyard.
That's this coming weekend.
That's coming this weekend. I said, you've never been on Hummingbird Trail? He goes, no. And I said, okay, we're going.
Oh, that's exciting. I want to come.
Yeah. Caves, Indian paintings on the walls. It's awesome. It's awesome.
That sounds incredible.
You
Everybody,
you
you're
have to make your way out here
perfect.
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Yes. Working on it for sure.
Yeah.
Might be there this weekend to join you on the hike. We'll see.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for coming on our show and sharing so much. I know Allie's already said it a million times, but I'm feeling inspired too. So thank you for sharing with us and our listeners.
Yeah. Again, thanks so much for inviting us on the show, and we're glad to share our experiences with folks who are interested in travel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just go for it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Wanderlusting Wives podcast. Come escape with us again every other Tuesday for Travel Tuesdays and every other Wednesday for Wildcard Wednesdays.
Don't forget to give us a subscribe and a follow on all of our social media and wherever you listen to your podcasts. And until next time, wander on.